Mm.
We also recording? Okay. Okay. I know that that's been a thing. Hi, welcome back to the Better World podcast, where we'll be going over chapters, I almost said
79.
97, 79 to 89. I am Carolyn Leonard. I am the assistant producer on the project, and I am joined by
I'm Rebecca and I play Rowan.
hot man over here. Um, so oh, forgot. I'm drinking sparkling rosé, and I couldn't find a way to match that into my theme, so I'm gonna say it's spicy tears. Sparkling. I
So
don't know.
many of those today.
Lots
I
of tears.
I created my own drink. I call it the Yielding. It's
Oh
made of,
God!
I know. It's made of like mulled juice and a little bit of Fireball and ginger ale. So I was gonna like do some like Croaking Witch thing, but then I was like, no, this is really depressing, so I'm gonna call it the Yielding.
Wait, we're gonna have to add that to Amber's cocktail book.
Oh yeah.
She always has the good cocktails. Um, okay, and I don't have a theme for this week because for these chapters because I feel like there's a not a disconnect, but like a lot goes down, and I feel like there's some things that happen at the beginning and things that happen at the end, and I didn't know how to tie them together. So maybe by the end we will have figured out a theme as we talk about it. So sorry to our listeners, you'll come on that journey with us. So we start on chapter 79. We are with the larger crew, with Aelin and everybody as they're traveling to Terrasin. And we open with Irene showing off some of her healing skills, talking about how she's, having a little, she's throwing up in her pregnancy, as one does. Um, Again, why did you decide to not use a
I
condom? But
know, right? What the heck?
like, girl.
Decisions during wartime. Ugh.
But she and Elide are chatting, and Irene is saying that she could maybe heal Elide's ankle after the war is done. And they kind of talk about that process um, and compare it to what Kale went through with his healing, how, like, literally it would hurt a lot in order to repair it because she's saying she'd have to, like, break the bones and reset them, but that she'd also probably have to go through a lot of, like, inner healing, which I kind of like how in this series, I mean, like, yeah, there is a lot of like brain things. Nobody listened to me. Um, like mental stuff that can happen that would like you feel worse because it's like all in your head. But I like that she sort of makes that like a real thing in
It's
this.
very real, and it's very strongly connected to the journey that Ellie goes on just in these next few pages because
Mhm.
the injury in her ankle is directly connected to Vernon, who caused that in the first place. I imagine if she did go through with the healing, which I hope she did eventually, there would probably be a lot of that sort of stuff to come up and work through that on a
Yeah.
more psychological level, just like Kale did.
Yeah. So then speak of what you just said. Borte comes to the door and is like, "Hey, your Uncle Vernon is here," which, like, side note, that his name is Uncle Vernon always makes me laugh because I picture Uncle Vernon from the series that we don't talk about because of
Yeah,
Terps.
mustache and
Um,
everything.
and I'm picturing him and, like, it probably is wrong. Um, but it turns out that they found him in the Farian Gap. So Aelin decides that she will let Elide kind of decide his fate, talk to him. One of my favorite parts is when, like, Elide's sort of like, "Oh, he has a bloody and possibly broken nose," and then she looks at Lorcan's fist and she's like, "Oh, they're bloody." And I just like that he was like, "Let me punch you in the face, dude."
He was pissed. He was simmering, like, ugh,
It's
very
yeah.
scary.
So she tells Vernon off and like that she hates him, yada yada. He tells her, and I think this is the first time I find out that Morath has parents. So, she's talking about how she's the lady, and he's like, LOL, there's nothing there, which made me hate him more. And then she decides she's done talking to him and says I'm gonna basically leave you here for my friends to beat you up. And isn't that nice? Because you kind of did that to me when I was growing up, when you messed up my ankle and just fucked it up. You didn't even try to get a healer." So then Aelin goes in to talk with Vernon and sort of see what she might want to do with him. And end of the chapter is he reveals that Maeve was with Erewhon at Morath, working to unite forces, which we as readers kind of knew because of Dorian, but this is the first time that Aelin's group is learning that fun fact.
It's like her worst nightmare at this point. Like, this is the absolute worst thing that could
Yeah.
happen. It's just blow after blow after blow.
No, I feel like every chapter with Aelin, at least that I've done for this podcast, is like at the end of the chapter, it's like, here's another punch in the face. And
God,
she's like, oh God, I don't know what to do.
something else we have to deal with.
So as we move into chapter 80, Aelin then guesses that Erewhon and Maeve probably kind of, because the way he described, like, they told me to leave or like he left, she's guessing that they kind of were like, we're going to make sure that you run into Vernon so that he can, give you a little taste of what's coming, because they're kind of sick like that. And she also learns from him that the rest of the Iron Teeth and their wyverns were sent up to Terrasen to the battle, which is not good. She then decides to leave Vernon to die chained up, just like he chained up Elide, which is a nice little
Hmm.
circle on that for him. Elide had asked for it to be quick because, yeah, quick but not painless because her dad would have wanted it to be quick. And then she's like, Jakey, never mind. Like, I hate this guy. You guys.
He's fine with just locking him up to
That's-
starve to death for days and
and
days.
then she's like, we should find another way to barricade the door so that like
Let's
nobody
make
gets
sure
in.
he stays inside.
Which
No
like I
escape.
respect. And then that chapter again ends. Aelin is like, what are we gonna do? And is chatting there with Rowan. They're sort of looking out at everything. And I just love Rowan so much because he says that like we'll face what's coming together. Um, so yeah, Rowan's pretty cool. Do you want to talk about Russ?
Rowan's such a sweetheart. He's just like morphed into this like soft-hearted sweetheart. Like it's such a stark difference, his progression throughout the
Mhm.
series, but now he's like fully, I'm here for you. Like you're the star of the show, Aelin. I'm here to support you. And she even says like I don't think he knows what to do, but and he's not even pretending. Like he's honest with her.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna try. That's the best that we can do. We're gonna try. They're not giving up, even though they have no plan. Not really. And it seems like at this point, both of them are probably like, we're not gonna come out of this alive. But they do it anyway, which is so incredibly brave. And it's so
Yeah.
great that they have each other to lean on. Because I think Rowan would be the same. Like, he would be just as terrified if he didn't have Aelin with him.
Mhm.
So they have each other. And I think that's part of what gets them as far as they do, because they can lean on each other. And Rowan is like this rock that
Yeah.
Aelin can rest on, and he can also get her fired up and push her when she needs to be pushed, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
He's the only one that she's willing to like take her shields down with entirely. And I think if she
Mhm.
had that ability, because as we all know, they all need heavy therapy in this book. And her ability to at least like not use Ron as a therapist, but like take some of that facade away, I feel like
Mhm.
is to her as a not human. She's not totally human, but
I mean, he does it willingly. He says such a therapist thing, don't burden yourself with the what ifs.
yeah. I sometimes
Amazing.
need Rowan to be there, and I'm just talking about like my regular life where I'm just like, I don't want to. What if this happens at work? And that's not the whole fate of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah, yeah. But he's a good therapist. I give him an A plus.
You'll bring that to your portrayal of him
Yeah.
as a
Oh
real.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
So moving on to chapter 81, we are now in Orinth with Adian and all of that crew. Um, so they're sort of knowing that they're going to be absolutely fucked once the battle restarts in the morning. And then there's this lovely little portion where Adian sees Lysandra. She's getting some milk to warm up for, or that is warmed up for Evangeline because she can't sleep. And Adian's like, hey, can I come chat with her too? And he ends up telling Evangeline this cute story about, well, not cute, but It's cute that he
You're
tells
both
her
right.
that he shit his pants all night, before his first battle, and, like, just him relating to her on that level that, like, he knows that it's scary even though he seems like this big, strong guy. He comforts her and says I highlighted this on another reread, but, and he says, "But just remember this fear of yours, it means you have something worth fighting for, something you care so greatly for that losing is the worst thing you can imagine." And I just think that that's whether or not you're a child is sort of like a good sentiment, and he's that the other side doesn't really care as much what they're fighting for. It's just like
Mhm.
Maeve and Erewhon have something to fight for, but like the rest of the people are just kind of doing what they say. They don't actually have anything behind it.
Yeah.
Um, and then we see Darrow is talking to them. Is this in the morning? I've lost track. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's showing that he saved the King's Flame from Orlin when he was king, which in this part, I don't know if I just forgotten, but I didn't realize that Darrow was Orlan's like consort. I don't know if they were married, but saying that they were the great loves, and we had
Oh,
learned
yeah.
that Orlin was with a guy, and that's kind of why everything was gonna go through Aylin's line since he was her great uncle, I think, because he couldn't have kids with a man. Um, but somehow that just made everything, like, make more sense about Darrow's character when they're like, "Oh, yeah, he was Orlan like, Orlan was his great love." That, like, yeah, he's kind of being a dick to Aelin because his husband essentially was, like, murdered, and then there was no hope for Terrasen. So I kind of forgot how, like, central he was to some of that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, he's gotta be, like, holding on to the past a lot because of how much
Yeah.
he lost, and, like,
Yeah,
that
like, it
that kind
wasn't
of loss
just
leaves a permanent mark inside you.
yeah, because I was kept thinking with his character that it was, like, just him being old-fashioned and being, like, one of the lords and that kind of thing, but I wasn't thinking about how it was tied in with the last king was, like, his husband, basically.
Yeah, I think it can be both. I think he still has well, he's definitely a little bit sexist, but and he's still got, like, kind of that clinging to tradition
Mhm.
type thing. I think, though, with Evangeline coming in, she helped a lot, which is basically what Aelin told her to do, to,
Mhm.
like, turn him around and make him see, like, "Okay, we need to do things a different way," and you can be a little more optimistic about Aelin's
Yeah,
chances.
and him saying in this part, he says something about, like, "I did it for it like, for the children," and, like, the children were always so I think
Mhm.
he's maybe finally kind of coming to terms with, like, this is for the next generation, this isn't for me as an old dude, this is for, like,
Yeah,
the future of Terrasen.
yeah.
And he also asks Evangeline to be a messenger, in the battle, and Lysander's kinda like, "Dude, what? That's dangerous," but he's like, "No, it's to keep her busy," because he realizes that that's the best thing for her, which is also, like, a way for us to kind of or not re-like, we never liked him to begin with, but, like, get cool with Darrow. I think that he's like, as a person, as a character, seeing him as more full of a person, and that it's not like he and Lysander are on good terms, but they're on slightly better terms, I think, when they're uniting over Evangeline.
It's a good narrative device as well to have Evangeline carry messages so, like, we as readers can keep up with what's happening, and it makes sense, like, for the characters to all stay, like, in the know of what's going on. And it's
Yeah.
also nice because she is, like, the next generation, we do get a little bit of her perspective later on as well, which
Mhm.
is very interesting.
Yeah, I liked seeing that. I forgot how much we get to see of her in some of this book because she doesn't really do much in
Yeah.
the other. Um, and let's see. So then they are on. I basically always picture Helm's Deep whenever I picture anybody on like the top of a tower in a battle. Um, that's where they are, and they're seeing that some of the iron teeth on the wyverns are showing up, like we learned from Vernon. They're like, we basically are dead now. Adian then finally stops being a dick, sort of, and says, Lysandra, you should run. And she's like, no. And you wouldn't say that to other warriors. And he's like, but I'm not. I don't love the other warriors.
Aw.
It's you, which is like cute, but then also I'm still mad at him. Um, I don't know how to feel about that. Like,
He'll
why?
he'll never be forgiven from us, I don't think.
couldn't you talk to her about it like before everybody's under duress? Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, he's literally like doing this in front of his commanders and just like ignoring them. Being like,
I didn't
please
even think of
listen, get out of here. I love you.
and
And she
I
literally doesn't do it.
no, which like of course Lysandra doesn't because she's like, no, I'm a badass. Like,
Yeah. She's like she's literally been carrying this entire army on her shoulders the whole
yeah,
time. Like you do
yeah,
not want to send her away.
no. Just because Adian's like, oh, love you. And she's like, okay, well, like, cool, we have to
Too
move on
bad.
from them.
Yeah.
But it's still cute. Like in my, in my princess dreams, yes, I would love for a guy who's trying to go to war then be like, "Oh, I love you." Like that sounds great. So it fulfills that for me. But
Very romantic.
yeah, but overall, I'm like, "Come on, man." Um and then we see some more wyverns and everybody's like, "No." And then Adian realizes he sees Manon, and so it's her and the 13 and um Manon says that they are there to honor the last time that the Krakens fought with Brannon, kind of in memory of that, and obviously to fight for a better world. And then I imagine there being like the clouds kind of move, and then you
Hmm.
see that like there's thousands of Kraken witches with them. And it's just glorious. And I think I tear up a little bit every time I read this part.
Yeah, I can just picture like all of those red cloaks like flowing together like a
Mhm.
big sea of red and all the broomsticks. Oh my gosh, I want to ride a broomstick so badly.
I I don't because it sounds uncomfortable. Like I hate riding a bike, and so I'm guessing that riding a broom is kind of like riding a bike. Um, so that's a no for me.
That's fair. That's fair.
I always wonder though, what are your legs doing? Like, are they helping in the air?
I mean, some models have like those like little ankle hooks on the
Mhm.
bottom that, but I always just imagine like I'm just kind of swinging my feet back and forth in the
Like
air,
a swing.
using them to maneuver this way and that.
But yeah, I love that visual. I feel like there's something about Sarah J. Maas's ability to write those kinds of visuals uh,
Hmm.
that I just see it very clearly in my head.
She does a good job.
Obviously, how visuals work. Let me be in charge of a podcast. And then we move on to chapter 82, which I enjoy this part a lot. Just it's like quickly glossed over, but basically Morath's like, holy fuck. We're
Hmm.
just not
As they
in this
should.
space for a day. And I like that very quick, just like the witches are scaring them. So during this time of rest, Manon forms a plan to attack the other Iron Teeth because she was the one who came up with all their formations and stuff. Um, as the former wing leader. And she also acknowledges to the 13 that there's going to be like family, lovers, all sorts of people who they're going to have to be fighting against. So she sort of says, like, think about it if you actually want to fight them, because I understand it if it's going to be too difficult for you. Um, Speaking of lovers, Lysandra and Adian find each other and they essentially make up. Again, he still needs to get his life together, but they essentially make up and like admit that they have feelings for each other. It's very sexually charged because like my favorite part is when Lysandra's like she even though she was a very well trained courtesan, she couldn't help blushing or like
Oh
something
my
like that. I
God.
was like, girl,
Oh.
get it together. But they sort of say that they will talk again after the battle. Like if we make it out, we'll,
Yeah. And
you
and
know.
she also had like a little caveat, like she wouldn't kiss him, wouldn't give him that sort of promise or farewell. I think there's still a little piece of her that's kind of holding back. And she probably understands on some level, like it's not necessarily a good idea to like just go all in when you're right before a war, because your mind is like not in that headspace.
Mhm.
You make a lot of rash decisions when you think that
She
you're
has her
about to
shit
die.
together. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's thinking with her brain, and Adian is thinking with his penis.
Yes, exactly.
Which, like, honestly is very in character for him. I feel like he's just like a himbo, and so to be not thinking with his strategic brain is accurate for him.
Yep, yep, yep.
Chapter 83 is a nice and short one. Dorian has escaped Morath. He decides to summon Gavin. He wants to do it to kind of say goodbye to Gavin because he's not sure what's going to happen once they hopefully um, lock the gates, and they have a lovely little bit where Dorian says that he is going to take care of Otterlin and he won't abandon it. And then he has his hand on Damaris, and Damaris like warms, meaning that, he's telling the true truth, which I love. And then when Gavin is saying that he knows I have always known that, then like the blade is even warmer. And I just thought that that was that was cute. I liked it for these guys.
What a nice thing to have a device that like affirms whatever you say. That's gotta be so good for anxiety.
That's so true.
I wish I had that sword. But it's great for Dorian because he does have a lot of uncertainty, especially
Mhm.
like how much of the Valg like actually influence me. Like, am I Valg? Am I human? What
Yeah.
am I? So being able to have this sword has been really beneficial for him to like understand who he is and trust himself,
Yeah.
which is very important as a warrior and as a king. Like you have to trust yourself or you won't be able to get shit done.
Yeah, and I think having Gavin is nice too because also sort of sad, but it's like there's so much for Dorian to reconcile with his dad being like sort of valgy, like when he says, "Have you
Mhm.
come to save me?" And yeah, like he was clearly being raised for half his life by somebody who like wasn't totally in control of themselves and like was making decisions that weren't really his, and that's probably very confusing for Dorian. So to have kind of a father figure, grand bajillion father figure that he can talk to, because they both say that they sort of hope that they can talk um, after the gates are closed. So yeah, that's a nice little wrap up on Dorian. Not on Dorian, but on his some of his journey. It's a
Yeah.
wrap on Dorian for this section though.
I mean, th this is like kind of the conclusion of his identity journey because even at the end, he thinks about Saoirse. I don't know if that's how you pronounce
Mhm.
her name, Saoirse, and
Source, I think.
and he thinks about her and he doesn't like feel that horrible twang of pain that he has previously. Like now it's like understanding. It's
Mhm.
more of like she made her choices and you have to move on from that and remember her for that. But he's able to just like add it into his identity and understand that she did it for him, she did it for her people. And I think that's a little wrap up on him because he's been struggling with that for a while, but
Yeah.
now he's like, I can let go, I can move on, keep doing what I need to do.
That's actually maybe what I don't know what the word would be, but kind of what the theme feels like for a lot of the characters in these chapters because that kind of happens with a lead and like
Mm.
Vernon. I think in a couple chapters that we'll get to, it kind of happens with Aelin and Dovier. Um, it's happening here. It's kind of even happening with like Lysandra and Darrow, and like people are kind of like coming to a head in their story where they're then gonna be able to move on. Manon, not the case, but we'll get to that. Um, so chapter 84, speaking of Manon, we are back with her and the 13, and then the 13 are just the best, and they have all decided to fight. I feel like obviously as they all would, but they all give these great reasons for fighting. Like Bronwyn has a really old horn that has been from like when the witches were all united, and that a warrior used it to warn people that the old Kraken Queen Rhiannon had been killed. Um, so it gave people time to run and live, and like now she's doing that again. And just everybody goes through all these adorable things, and like I just love them. I just love the 13. I wish there was like a novella that was just like the 13's
Oh,
backstory or something.
yes. They all have such interesting personalities and backstories, and I don't think we learn nearly enough about the rest of them. I like that we learn a lot about Astrid though, and she
Mhm.
keeps like coming back to her origin of pain and her determination, which is a good reminder, I think, throughout all of this.
Yeah. What happens next? Oh, so they're basically all getting ready to fight is what ends up happening is like the 13 all give their reasons. Lysandra goes into the river to sort of surprise people from behind, just everybody's getting ready to fight. And then at the end, Adian says probably the best thing he says, which is, let's make this a fight worthy of a song. And
Yeah.
it might be kind of cliche, but like I love in fantasy books when people are always talking about like maybe they'll sing songs about us. And I just love that thought.
Yes, I want to hear this song. I want someone to write the song and put it to music and play it bard style. I want that
Yes,
more than anything.
I would go hard dancing to that at a Ren fair.
Yes. Maybe they play that at someone's birthday.
Oh, a birthday, you
Yeah.
say? Could that be happening 10 years in the future?
Maybe.
So in chapter 85, the 13 and the Krakens are all going after the Iron Teeth. It's kind of a montage sequence, I feel like, of some fighting. Lysandra is in the river. She is making sure to save people and take them out of the river if they're fighting with her, if they're fighting against her. She goes and makes sure that they're pinned under rocks, which I thought was pretty savage, and I loved it for her. Um, she does get kind of like behind Morath and is using her tail and stuff behind them. Adian is using fire lances. Um, it's seeming like things are going okay until a Valg prince climbs over the wall.
Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
Wild Prince.
Fuck you, Valg prince. So it pretty much goes right into 86, where Adian is fighting this Valg prince. Um, and he actually gets a kind of little wrap up on his past, um, where he has a little sequence where he's thinking about that he's like fighting for everybody who trained him, who all died in the massacre of Terrasin, that he's using Rose shield,
Mm,
um, which wasn't like it's not like it had any lore around it that it would have a reason for not breaking, but it isn't breaking, so he's kind of like there's something deeper here, which I just love that thought of like the past helping him. Um, so I feel like he kind of reconciles with a bit of his history.
yeah, yeah. There's even a mention to like his Fey heritage that the Valak said, hissed
Mhm.
Fey bastard. And it's funny because it's like such a brief thing. It says that Adian didn't know what it meant and he didn't care. I'm like, well, maybe I want to know what it meant. Does that
But
mean anything?
doesn't Adian already know that Gavriel's his dad?
Exactly, which is why I'm like,
That's
what is
I'm
what does
like
that
Adian. Did you
mean?
forget? Like you're a
Maybe
Fae
maybe like he didn't
bastard.
realize how fey he appears or like
Hmm,
his essence emanates maybe, which it
that's true.
definitely does because he's unnaturally strong and he's
Yeah.
probably gonna live a fairly long time and he's a wonderful warrior. But I think in some instances he kind of underestimates himself and this just was a bit of an indicator of that to me.
Hmm, yeah, that's a good point. Um, but it's not going well because he gets stabbed because they do mention that the Valid Prince like kind of tricked him, which I did like that showing that Adian usually has really good prowess. It kind of takes somebody who is has a demon inside of them to figure out a way to best him. But so and Ren is luckily able to get the prince with one of the fire lances. So as we know, fire takes care of Valg. But then Adian passes out and we cut to Evangeline delivering a message to Darrow, where he finds out that Adian was hurt. And she has a cute little. Where did it go? Do, do, do. Oh yeah, where this is sort of like third person omniscient. It says she had never had a brother or a father. She hadn't yet decided which one she would like Adian to be, and I just thought that that was
Mm.
another little insight into her and where what maybe could happen for her in the future, but like and her hopes for it, for kind of the younger generation.
Yeah.
Um, Darrow understands that she's probably not pleased with the situation, and he does keep her there. Has her stop being a messenger, which is sweet. How much he looks out for her and is like thinking about not just her physical well-being, but her mental well-being.
Yeah, as much as possible, still
Mhm.
being able to see a little bit of what's going on. She's got to be super traumatized from this.
Yeah. I do think this made me think a lot of how traumatized Evangeline would be. Because I mean, everybody's young, everybody's, like, barely
Mhm.
20,
Yeah.
but she's a child who is seeing all of this, like, death and destruction. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, and to be so young, you can't do anything about it, and you know
Mhm.
that you're so helpless, which I think is another good reason that she was given the job of messenger, so she can feel like she's contributing and really making a
Mhm.
difference. But it's good to have a break every once in a while and, have some broth, calm your stomach, not
Calm down,
vomit.
yeah.
Yep.
But I like how he says it also, like, "You will remain here with me, I might have need of you," where he's
Yeah,
making it not about like, he's not like, "Oh, you poor thing." He's like, "Oh, actually, I need you." So
he's
that's
very
cute.
tactful.
Yeah. I guess that's all those years in the court, you kinda figure out
Mhm,
how to be
and he
like
likes
that.
her. He's kind to her.
Yeah. Chapter 87, we move back to Aylin's gang. This is where we kind of have a little bit of like a Aylin reflecting on her past moment. Rowan is tattooing her back, so he is replacing the tattoo that she got in Air of Fire because all of her torture and they kept wiping all her scars away. So he's giving her that tattoo again, and he also mentions, or not he mentions, she mentions that there's a new design in there as well, which is why it's taking so long. Um, and they discuss how they're going to pass Endovier soon. Her kind of reflecting on that. That was where she kind of like everything was over, it seemed like. They also discuss it's not like she reconciles with it, but how she is both Fae and human. And is she more
Mhm.
Fae? Is she more human? Like just kind of her reflecting on that portion of her being. Um,
Rowan seems to think that she's a human with fate instincts. I think it's interesting that he just mentions the not so fun ones like territorial, dominant, aggressive, and I'm kind of wondering like what are the nice fae like what it means to be human, we know that, but what does it mean
Mhm.
to be fae?
Maybe it is the more aggressive things, and I mean, you probably think more about Rowan's character than I do, but I feel like he kind of likes that. Like
He definitely likes those traits in Aelin because it's complementary to his own and rather than like butting against each other in that way they
Mhm,
kind of come together especially with the dominance and aggressive they're a very forceful team they're a
mhm.
force to be reckoned with. I
Oh, for
hope
sure.
at some point they can both come to discover the softer fate instincts and be able to like sink into that, which I imagine to be something like grace and beauty and gentleness. I don't know if that is the case. We haven't really seen them get a chance to like chill out.
That's what I was gonna say, I feel like right now because they've and, like, Rowan's always been kind of at war to some extent, like, always doing weird
Mhm.
things for Maeve, and Aylin's always been fighting for her life mentally or physically for the most part that, like, they've never actually probably gotten to calm down, like you said, and explore those. So maybe we'll see that in our film that everybody should watch
That'd be cool.
when hopefully they've had a chance to chill.
Mhm.
Um, Now we get to the good stuff. I mean, everything else is good, but um, we've moved to Elite
Oh
and
yeah,
Lorcan.
yeah. The good
Yes.
stuff.
The good stuff, the annoying stuff. So Lorcan is putting the salve on her ankle and, like, massaging it in there, and the girl is getting horned up. I
Oh.
really enjoyed when he touches her foot and then she's like says
Oh
something
my
like, let
God.
out a noise that, like, didn't have to do with the pain or something, and I was like, "Girl, you're
Yeah,
innocent. This is some favorite Rhysand shit." Not as bad though.
but that's such a good observation though because I noticed she makes a comment about his fingers. She's like, "God's above those fingers," and I'm like, "That sounds familiar. I'm pretty sure Feyre said that very same thing about Rhysand." And I just love like seeing these parallels sometimes
Mhm.
with Sarah's writing where she has like certain things that she likes to include, especially in the more sexy scenes. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, fingers. I'm not that attracted to fingers myself, but it really seems like
You know our girl
mm,
Sarah J. Maas is into looking at men's fingers.
yes, it would seem so.
So then Elide is finally like, we're gonna do it. And she's very coy and things about like, oh, I need help getting in the bath. But it's cute because it also kind of mentions how she's like nervous about it because she does even say to Lorcan, like, I don't really know what I'm doing. But
Mhm.
he is great, and despite being like an old ass dude, who's probably fucked so many men, women, and fays, just like lets her, he's letting her lead it, which is
Mhm.
adorable. And we all love a man who is into consent. Um, and then the greatest letdown,
Mhm.
any writing. So Lorcan did.
Yep. Yep. I swear this is the most Google searched question about this series. What did Lorcan do?
When I was reading it for the first time, I got like pretty spoiled from the internet at some stuff. Like I always knew, although I know I would have immediately thought of it, that Aelin and Selena were the same person. Like there was so much going on, but they'd
Mhm.
always be like this, what did Lorcan do? And so then when in not Tower of Dawn, in Empire of Storms, when she gets like mad at Lorcan and stuff, I thought that's what it was about. And I was like, do people not have like literacy skills? Do they not understand what he did to like make a lead mad at him, like all that stuff? That's what I thought people were Googling, what did Lorcan do? And then I got to this part in the book and I was like, oh my God, this is what people want to know what he did. They want to know what sick
Mhm.
stuff he did. And so do I.
Yeah, we were robbed. We were robbed. This would have been a perfect moment for a good old-fashioned sex scene, and we were robbed. And I have scoured the internet, fanfiction.net, for something that is like decent, and I have yet to find it. So if anyone wants to write out this scene for me, that'd be great.
DM it too.
Mhm. Just
But
send it
I
to all of us.
the good, like what I do like when things are left like this is that almost you get to imagine it. So then it's like your ideal situation for them. It doesn't have to be like, oh, and then the author did this. But then also the downside is that we don't get to read it. And I want to know. I want to know what he did because I bet it was great.
Yeah. I just hope that they actually used that bathwater because that would be kind of a waste. It looks like a nice bath.
As a bath connoisseur, I agree. But also that sound seems uncomfortable. But maybe they used it after to clean themselves up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm
They
sure
took
they
a
were.
nice relaxing bath after
Mhm.
they did what Lorcan did.
And then they probably got a little like they had a little fun in the bath too.
Yeah. Ugh. Someday we'll have our answer.
And then they just go from that to they, meaning Sarah J. Maas, you rude bitch, went from Lorcan and Alede having sex to Aelin having a nightmare about Cairn,
Freaking
which
nightmare.
like is just rude on many levels. Um, but I feel like that kind of brings back in what I feel like a lot of like, some online discourse, fan theorizing that like did this happen or did it not? Like the rest of the book, or is she always
Mhm.
there? Like, is this stuff
Oh,
enemies?
oof, ooh,
And
those
also, like,
types of theories creep me
I
out.
hate
Make
it,
me
but like this
so
little bit always
uncomfortable.
makes me think of that because it's like, what if that was reality for a hot sec? And I feel like I'm guessing Sarah J. Maas kind of wanted you to like be thinking that, but also so much happened that I'd be pissed if it was like in the last Twilight movie where they strayed from the books and they suddenly had like the fight scene and you're just like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Like
This
that's
isn't
how it
supposed to
feels.
happen. It also makes sense though because she is thinking about Endovier, and usually when you
Mhm.
approach like old places that caused you a lot of harm, you start to have those old trauma responses come back. So it does make sense that she would have a nightmare at this point, even though it's not from her time at Endovier.
Mhm.
It's still a time when she was like locked up and trapped, and
Mhm.
there was absolutely no escape. I take a little comfort in that being like the dream as opposed to reality, since it kind of makes sense for where she is at this
Mhm.
point. But damn, that mask over her face. She got it off in the last podcast that I was on,
Oh
but
yeah,
like,
why do we keep doing
oh,
the traumatic things together?
no. But like it's
Yeah.
scary, it's terrifying, and I hope she stops having those dreams because that sucks.
Yeah, this poor girl.
Hmm.
Um, And they keep talking about trauma. As we move on in this chapter, I enjoy the description of sort of like Aylin's looking around and she's like, "Oh, Elide and Lorcan, they
She's
fucked
so
last night."
perceptive. She's like, "Oh, Elite's riding high. I bet that Lorcan has a purely male fey look on his face or whatever." Oh, she says a purely male smile, which is
Yeah.
another thing that Sarah J. Maas kind of writes in her other books. Purely male, like that satisfied kind of smug
Yeah. We
smile.
all
I don't know if I'll be able to portray that, but I'm gonna work on my purely male smile. We'll see how it
purely
goes.
male.
Yeah.
Um, and then something that I liked, is that despite like this could have been a prime opportunity for some like girl talk, or like I feel like if a man was writing this book, they'd be like, oh, and then they like talked about how big his penis was, which yes, we all like that discourse. However, um, they just immediately start talking about their traumas,
Mhm.
which
Which is
also,
also very typical.
which is what girls do. We're like,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later. And they talk about the interesting sort of thing that like Paranth and Endovier aren't actually that far apart. So they were both going through very traumatic situations and yet they weren't that far from each other. So I feel like there's sort of a sense of comfort in them like discussing
Mhm.
that, knowing that like it's almost like they were there with each other even though they weren't, just like geographically. They were, I mean, not that they weren't. They were geographically, but they didn't know that. Like she, I think she
Yeah.
thought he was dead, but um it's kind of nice for them to have that moment, I think, where they can reflect on what's happened but move forward together.
Yeah. And both of them were able to escape their horrible
Mhm.
situations, which is
And now here
awesome.
they are, fighting for a better world.
Yeah.
Yes. And then at the end of this chapter, like I said earlier, Aylin's always learning some shit. Um,
Mhm.
Dorian shows up and he has all three word keys.
Yep.
Um,
Right in the worst place, the place she did not want to be at, but
Correct.
oh
He just
well.
really wants to mess with her. No, not intentionally, it just happened. So that's our, I guess we didn't have a wrap on Dorian. Now we have a wrap on Dorian. I forgot that he showed up.
Oh,
Um, but
briefly.
this is the end of that crew. We are going to move back to Orinth permanently for chapters 88 and 89. I will mentally prepare. Give everyone a moment to mentally
Mhm.
prepare.
Mhm.
Um, So, I mean, 88, I guess, is fine. We're back in Orinth. Dorian is being healed. He then is thinking about Gavriel. Um, he's sort of looking off because he's like, I can't just be healed. And he sees that Lysandra was doing like some killer work, literally, in the
Mhm.
river, but that it did kind of reveal to the Morath crew that there's another way to get into the castle, like through the river. So Adian is doing his best to signal to the 13 that um to do something about it basically because he can't.
Yeah.
And as that's happening, fucking Iskra shows up and
Ugh,
she and her wyvern slam into Manon.
I hate that bitch.
I just recently I'm now doing a listen, like a listen for the first time. I haven't listened to the audiobooks before. And I was just doing Air of Fire the other week, and I was trying to chop up some carrots, and it was the like Iskra Petra situation, and like reading that, listening right before this, I feel like made it even better of what's gonna come.
Mhm.
So as we move into 87, 89, Iskra's Wyvern is hurting Abraxos. Um, It's not good. He's not doing well, and he's my boy. Um, so Manon, oh God, I love her so much, and I love Abraxas. Manon is getting ready. She's basically like, I'm gonna jump to Iskra. She's like
Mhm.
calculating the distance because she wants to make sure that Abraxos gets to safety because she basically loves him more than she loves herself, which is like such a big move for Manon because she used to only care about
Yeah.
herself. And as she's about to jump on, then Petra shows up with
Ooh,
her crew. They have decided to be with Manon and everybody and be on the good side.
hell yeah.
Yes. Oh God, no,
Oh.
Sel. I was gonna say. All right, here, we'll keep going. Yes. Um, so we're right where, and I have it in all caps in my notes. Petra shows up with her iron teeth.
Mhm.
Hell, I was just saying you probably didn't hear, but I just recently was listening to Air of Fire, and so I feel like there's so much like great, like that was perfect to listen to before reading this section because like fuck you, Iskra. And anyway, then some more exclamation points. Petra's going to fight Iskra because Iskra killed her first wyvern in Air of Fire! Two exclamation
Yep.
points. Um, which is just like so heartbreaking because to me, um, any pet lovers out there, the wyverns are basically like if your cat could talk to you. So that is how I imagine Abraxas is like a big version of my cat. And
Mhm.
if somebody was a dick and made it so that my cat died saving me, I'd want to fucking kill them.
Hell yeah.
Which is mhm, I'm sure it does. Yeah, I this is I mean, screw the fucking Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms tandem read. Tandem read all of them at once. Because it did feel like I feel like any other time I've read it, there's so much that happens in between that like it doesn't feel so fresh. But because this was like last week I was listening to this, I was just like, fuck yes.
Yes.
Everybody who's just listening,
Pirate.
I pumped my fist. Um, so then basically Petra is like, bitch, I got this to Manon. And then she does some crazy shit where she's like circling around Iskra and her wyvern so that she's going. Yeah, and she, like,
Mhm.
circles, and then, like so the wyvern can't even, like, flap his wings, and then Manon realizes and it's both depressing and, like, beautiful and, like, everything that Manon's like, "Oh, she's taken one for the team, like, Petra's going down," and oh god, I'm gonna tear up. Fuck. And then when she's, like, gonna go down, she says for Keely, who was her wyvern, and,
Mm.
like, god, I just love it. I mean, it's really sad, but also, like I get it, which maybe means I love my cat too much, but, like, it's fine.
Yes.
Um,
You can never love your cat too much.
yeah, like, and just her able to do that, like, I'm sure this has been, like, just biting at her this whole time, like, fucking Iskra.
Mhm.
I'm glad she got to kill her. I'm sad that Petra also died, but I feel like that was kind of full circle for her. She probably knew she might not make it out alive, may as well go down taking out your arch nemesis.
I mean, if
Anyway,
you gotta go, that's the way to go. Taking out
yes.
your arch nemesis.
Oh, I just
Revenge.
couldn't drink this correctly because I got too fired up. Of all the chapters I picked to actually have an alcoholic beverage, or podcast, it was this one, which made so we're gonna keep going, and I think I'm just gonna do the synopsis and then we can talk because things happen. Um, so then a lot of things happen all at once. Sort of. The 13 do great. They do block that river entry that we mentioned earlier. Abraxos gets to safety in like on the castle. Not banquet, parapet. I don't know. Don't ask me about geography or fuck. What's that? What is that called? I don't know. Not geology. And then Manon is obviously freaking out because Abraxos like is pretty fucked up. Then Lysandra has made her way back to the castle, sees Adian, she's kind of fucked up about that, whatever. Then Lysandra tells Manon and Adian that the witch tower is back up. That's like what she's been trying to get back to them to say because they'd be fucked with the witch tower. And then as she's telling them that, they set it off, a bunch of Krakens die. And then the worst thing that Sarah J. Maas has ever written happens, which is Manon's like, get me a wyvern. Like, I just need another one. It's fine. We'll go take care of it. And then they all say the 13 live Manon, and Astrid punches Manon in the stomach, which is just like her form of love to basically be like, you can't come with us. You need to live and be the witch queen. And then the 13 all go through everybody and it's glorious. and it's so nicely written and it makes me cry every time, and they all go through and like everybody is slowly going down and it's so sad, and then Manon's stupid ass grandma is in the tower and or by the tower, and then Astrid is just like fuck you, I hate you, and kills her, and it's so beautiful, and much better than I just said it. And then in order to destroy the witch tower, Astrid and everybody, all the witches are still a little bit alive, and then they all do the yielding. But instead of it being dark and bad, it's all beautiful and bright, and the darkness didn't claim them because they were light, and then they destroy the tower. The end.
Ugh.
And that was
Manon
my
is not the only one who got a gut punch.
description. I know it was pretty rude of her to make it be a gut punch because I'm like, thanks for giving us all a gut punch at once, bitch.
Yep. Yep.
You're like, you're like, no, actually, the 13 um just yielded and they all died. And
Mhm.
I just love that Astrid is the one who takes out Manon's stupid grandma.
Yep.
I hate it.
Yep.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Bitch. Ugh, I love it and I hate it. And the one good thing about the way you split these chapters up is that I didn't have to continue. Because 90 might might be worse. So fun story for I think I've probably told you guys here, but for our listeners, I like to bring my book in to read on lunch breaks at work. So I was reading this book for the first time, and I somehow luckily never managed to get spoiled on this. I'd sort of seen the like Liv Manon, but I was just like I didn't comprehend. So I'm just on my lunch break just reading this. Luckily I had an office and I was trying to stifle sobs so that the person sharing the wall with me didn't hear. And then it might have been like right when this chapter ends or shortly through chapter 90, my phone alarm went off telling me your hour is up. You must clock back into work. And
Oh
then I had to
god.
work after this. I was just like, what the fuck?
It's time for grieving and crying. Yeah.
I It was almost as bad as that time that I watched a dog die and then I on my lunch break and then I had to go to work because I saw a dog get hit by a car.
Oh my god.
I know, right? And it was almost as bad as that, which is not a good thing to watch. But yeah. Mhm. Ugh. Mhm.
Mhm.
It's because they're so fucking. And that's what I think what you were on your call, but we were talking before about Adian's talking to Evangeline, and he's like, "You basically you have something worth fighting for, and that's why you're scared. Like you have something you're trying to accomplish." And I think that that's what our lovely 13, 12 could do
Mm.
was that they were fighting for something, not just against someone like those other 100 Iron Teeth were. They were fighting for a better world, and I love them.
I can't believe they all had to make the yielding to destroy the tower. Like it was that powerful that all of them needed to do like the most explosive thing that they could all do. And I was so upset. I was like, when I first read this, I was like, why do they all have to die? Can we just not have had, like, maybe a few of them
I
do
think
the
that they were
yielding? Why did they all have to do it?
I think they were gonna die anyway. Mm, yeah, or it's not Crescent City, I think it's in Akatar, they, like, save a supposedly human named Briar from, like, Tamlin. It's I don't know, but that's what yeah, I've heard people say that the fan theory is because normally when you do the yielding, it's dark, but when they do the yielding, she specifically says that it wasn't darkness, it was
Mhm.
light, so that maybe they were yeah,
Oh, that
but
would be interesting.
so I think when we were talking about theme, or lack thereof that I picked, it is like everybody had a wrap on their character sort of not everybody, but there were a lot of wrap ups on like their past. So it's almost like they've reconciled with their past and now they can move forward. But I feel like this is why it's hard to pick a theme for these chapters, is because almost the opposite happens for Manon. Like I feel like she's kind of
Mhm.
had that moment, or she thought she did when she's becoming the queen, the witch queen. But then like this is a thing that absolutely rocks her world. And so pretend you aren't also the writer director. What do you think you will bring in from this chapter to your portrayal of Manon? I know you can't pretend you aren't. Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah, yeah, mhm, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, mhm, yeah.
Yeah.
But that is it's like
And
it
she
like
just spent all that time, like, doing emotional work on herself to
mhm,
be vulnerable and to be kind, and it's so upsetting that, like, all the people that she worked so hard to build that relationship with are now gone.
yeah, Manon is
true. That's true.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, and feel like real quick, our MVP for these chapters is if anybody doesn't say the 13, I will manually kick you out of this. The only other person, the only the the sub MVP, the like next is like if the 13 hadn't done what they did, Petra would be my MVP.
Yep.
But sorry, girl. I guess she can be the 13th of the 13 who are dead. Yeah. Um, I just it's just like, oh god. For anybody who wants to just like get their heart ripped out and stepped on, plug for our girl Taylor Ash's song. I forget what is it. Yeah, it's just the yielding, and she composed it like specifically for this section of.
Ugh.
I almost listened to it and then decided I wasn't that much of a masochist, but I was going to listen to it while I read it. But it's specifically for this part of the book where they're saying live Manon and then um, going and doing their thing. And it's kind of like a stab in the face, but like in a good way, I'd say. It's like a great stab in the face. So if
Like
you'd like,
stabbing both your tear ducts and then just dripping tears everywhere. It's beautiful.
that's true. I'm pretty sure that after it came out, I DM'd her "fuck you" or something along those lines, and she said "thank you," which was the correct. That's how I meant it. Um, yeah, and I basically almost hit her in the face with a broom at one point when I met her in real life. So, oh, I did almost set a pregnant person on fire. It's fine. Janine loves me. I think Peter was gonna kill me, but
So I never even saw
yeah, Peter was like, "You did what to my wife?" And I was like, "You do have a book husband, Janine, because he did just say that." Um, but it's fine. Everything's fine.
it. For the
Like
content.
yeah, the content was great. So, um, do we have anything else to say over this podcast episode?
Mhm.
Really makes me
Smithereens. What a
because
pirate word.
it really makes me picture smithereens.
I don't know what other word you would use, honestly.
Yeah, let me thesaurus smithereens. I don't have I have like a great thesaurus bookmarked for work though, but that's on my work computer. So
Smithereens.
smithereens. How does one spell? There we go. Bit, chunk, hunk, lump, particle,
Strands is good.
piece, portion, remnant, scrap.
Blasted apart.
What about morsel?
I like
Yeah.
that better.
I will say that, you know, when sometimes you can't tell how dumb something is until it's said out loud. Like, I genuinely never I can't find our chat. What tab am I on? Um, I didn't think it sounded dumb until you just said it because I only read it in my head. And in my mm, yeah, that smithereens sounds really stupid out loud. Smithereens.
Maybe her editor was like, "You need to come up with a more creative word than dust." Like,
Just right click.
smithereens, I guess?
Mm, um, no, 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 you know
Oh my god, yes.
is. I guess I never thought about that.
The Fixer-Upper song. No. They
I
should
think
have.
I saw the, Broadway, like, traveling the tour, and I think they do something like that
They did,
in
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um, and speaking of closure, let's wrap up this podcast. Thank you. It
Maybe that's a good theme.
was a great segue. And closure is a good theme, except for Manon, who had the opposite of closure. She had opening.
Yeah. For everyone else, though.
The 13 had a good closure. I feel like that was full circle for them. Um, but not Manon. So, thanks for joining us for this episode where we looked at chapters 79 to 89. If you join us next time, we'll be doing chapters 90 to 99. So, read along with us. Sorry that I'm so unhinged. Thanks for joining us.
Don't ever be sorry for that, come on.